Well, this is the first video as we start to get ready for our final review in the May 17th exam. The review I have scheduled goes over 18 days, and I'm going to talk about just how day 1 and day 2 will work of those 18. Now you're going to want to click into the final exam 18-day test prep, and when you do, you're going to find this various information on there and also see it in the packet. As always, there's going to be a question board that you can use to post any questions, some general resources which will include this note packet that you're going to have and formula sheets and things of that nature. In day 1 and 3 are going to be a diagnostic that you're going to do, so that's where you're going to find all this basic information. And then we're going to be starting and looking at the topics to review. There were 4 topics in our entire class. Days 4 and 6 of your review are going to be exploring data. 7 through 9, designing a study, which was just chapter 4. Probability was chapter 5 through 7. It's going to be days 10 through 14. Then we're going to wrap it up with chapters 8 through 12 on days 15 through 18, which will then get you ready for the exam. So let's look a little bit more about the packet that you have in your hands to help you prepare for this final exam. When you take your official exam and you go into your booklet, you're going to find 7 different sides of paper. That's your formula sheet. 3 of those formula sheets are going to cover the basic formulas. You're going to see the descriptive statistics. So if we scroll through it, the first 2 are going to be from chapter 1, which is going to be the mean and standard deviation of a sample. This third one you can actually ignore. The next set of these equations right here are all going to be chapter 3 based, which was writing the equation of a linear regression line. If they ask you to write an equation and you need it, remember this is your standard format. B sub naught is going to be your y-intercept, which is right here. B sub 1 is your slope, we can find right here. R is your correlation coefficient. Here's another way to write B sub 1 that if you don't have all these details, maybe this formula would be handy. This formula here, the standard deviation of B1, that is a standard deviation of the slope. I'll be honest, I don't know if I've ever really used this formula, but know that it is there in case you need to reference it. The second page then for probability, if we take a look at these first 2, this is going to be from chapter 5. Remember here, this is the probability of A or B, is that notation. So this is our union symbol, and then this is our intersection, which means and. This is the formula for conditional probability. Then we have what is the expected value of a distribution and the variance of a distribution, which was covered in chapter 6, and you can find that reference here. As you look at the formula sheet, you're going to see they go to the binomial distribution next. This is the formula for the probability of a binomial distribution. This here is the mean and standard deviation for a binomial distribution. Our mu of p hat and sigma of p hat is the mean and standard deviation of a sampling distribution of proportions. And then down here we have the mean and standard deviation of the sampling distribution of the means, which are nice things to reference. The third part of the formula sheet talks more about just the standard statistics. So if you want to remember this formula here, you're always going to find it. The confidence interval talks about it here in terms of words. Remember, together the critical value and the standard deviation of that statistic make up the margin of error. They're also going to list the sample mean and the sample proportion, showing you the standard deviation of that statistic. So this is, again, the sampling distribution of the means. This is for a sampling distribution of the proportions if we just have a single sample. Now, if you have 2 samples, either the difference or the sum of 2 means or 2 variables, again, we have the standard deviation of the means of 2 variables, which could also look like this. Truly, you don't have to be worried about this particular formula as long as you know the first one up here. We then have the standard deviation of 2 samples when you put those together. Again, this special case listed here is not necessarily needed to know as long as you know the original formula we normally deal with. In the actual test packet, the last 4 sheets in your packet are going to be the probability tables. You may and you may not even reference them because we have all of our calculator keystrokes we can use. Here we do have table A, which is the normal CDF table basically, and this one is showing us with negative z-scores. Table A is then continued with the positive z-scores and the area or the probability under the curve. We typically do use T CDF in our calculator, but this right here is the T distribution. Remember, the probability on here is going to give you the area underneath the curve. This is our degrees of freedom and the probability in the actual tail that you're looking at. Odds are you're never going to really have to use these tables if you're very comfortable and can use your calculator in a smart way. The last formula sheet is the chi-square distribution. This again uses the degrees of freedom and the probability in the tail, which you again probably will not be using because you could just use chi-CDF if needed. This is now going to lead us into what we're going to address for day 1 through 3. I'm going to have you take a diagnostic exam to see what you know and what you don't know. So let's look at day 1. If you click into the diagnostic exam here, we can see the details of what is expected. Now in this folder, you're going to find a PDF document of all of the learning objectives, which is also in your review note packet. We are going to start off on Friday is when the official window would open up for day 1. And in doing day 1, what you need to do is a multiple choice diagnostic exam. This is 40 multiple choice questions in which you are timed at 90 minutes to do it. The answers are entered online and you'll get the results at the end of it. To do this, I highly recommend setting 90 minutes of uninterrupted time. So if you can do that Friday, great. If not, schedule something Saturday or Sunday. This activity alone is worth 500 participation points, and the deadline for this is going to be Monday morning at 7 a.m. So if this is not completed, you get 0 points and you cannot make that up. Day 2 is then going to be the diagnostic for the free response questions. There's 6 free response questions. These are actually in your review packet. So here, get your calculator and formula sheet out. Sit down for another 90 minutes uninterrupted time. I would suggest this window to open up on Monday by the time, which is the deadline for multiple choice. Take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, sometime in that window to get 90 minutes to sit down and do your best to try the free responses. Then you're going to have day 3, which you're going to analyze the results of what you did for multiple choice and free response. This does need to be done by Friday, as the deadline for both day 2 and day 3 is combined for Friday, and that is another 500 points. So really, days 1, 2, and 3 is a total of 1,000 points just doing the diagnostic analysis of what you know. This is not graded on if you're correct or not. It's just to help you set a baseline and get a plan for how you should focus your study efforts going forward. I will talk in more detail on how to actually do the day 3 analysis in our next video.